The stars had never seemed so close. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Unity Station, watching ships from a dozen different worlds dock and depart. 15 years ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now they had family. The Valkyrie had been first. Their massive ships arrived in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning in 2272. And instead of weapons, they brought gifts. Instead of demands, they brought welcome. They called humans their lost siblings. The youngest children of the galaxy finally come home. Within a year, humanity had joined the Galactic Concordat, an alliance of 47 species spanning 10,000 worlds. Sarah's daughter, Maya, pressed her face against the transparent aluminum, her breath fogging the surface. The girl was 9 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn chin. She pointed at a Valkyrie transport, its hull covered in bioluminescent patterns that shifted like living art. "That's Ostal's family ship," Maya said. "Can we go say hello?" Sarah smiled and ruffled her daughter's hair. Ostal was Maya's best friend, a young Valkyrie who attended the same multi-species school on the station. The two had been inseparable since they met 3 years ago. Ostal's parents had even invited Maya to visit their homeworld next summer. "Maybe later, sweetie. Right now we need to get to the observation ceremony." The ceremony was a Concordat tradition, held once every cycle to honor their ancient customs. Sarah had attended twice before and found them beautiful, if somewhat strange. Today, they were honoring the hunting games, a tradition that went back thousands of years, according to the Valkyrie historians. The amphitheater was already filled when they arrived. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the curved seats. Humans sat beside Valkyrie, who sat beside the crystalline show and the six-limbed raisin. Children of all species played together in the designated areas, their laughter a universal language. Ambassador Torres gave Sarah a nod as they took their seats. He was Earth's primary representative to the Concordat, a silver-haired man who had dedicated his life to building bridges between worlds. "Dr. Chun," he said quietly. "Good timing. They're about to begin." The lights dimmed. Holographic displays filled the air above the amphitheater floor, showing vast forests and sweeping plains on distant worlds. A Valkyrie elder, her skin marked with the deep purple of great age, stepped forward to speak. "We gathered to honor the hunting games," she began, her words translated instantly into every language. "For 50,000 years, we have preserved the ancient ways. On sacred worlds, untouched by civilization, we hunt as our ancestors hunted. We test ourselves against the wild beasts, proving our worth against nature itself." The display showed Valkyrie hunters moving through alien jungles, tracking massive creatures that looked like a cross between bears and reptiles. Other species took their turns as well, each showing their traditional prey. The crowds cheered with each successful hunt. Sarah felt uncomfortable, but tried not to show it. Many human cultures had hunting traditions too, she reminded herself. This was just another expression of that same instinct, preserved across the ages. The Concordat had been nothing but kind to humanity. They had shared technology, medicine, and knowledge freely. If this was important to them, she could be respectful. Maya leaned against her shoulder, half asleep. The ceremony went on for another hour, showing different hunting worlds and different traditions. When it finally ended, the crowds dispersed slowly, talking and laughing. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" Maya asked, suddenly awake again. "You fell asleep during the ceremony and now you want ice cream?" "I was just resting my eyes," Maya said with perfect innocence. They found Ostal and his parents at the ice cream vendor, which served treats adapted for a dozen different species biology. Ostal's mother, Kaishin, greeted Sarah warmly, touching foreheads in the Valkyrie way. "Such a wonderful ceremony," Kaishin said. "It reminds us of who we were, even as we become something new together." "It was very impressive," Sarah agreed. Though privately she still felt oddly unsettled. The children ran off together, ice cream in hand, their voices fading into the crowd. Sarah watched them go, feeling the familiar tug of parental worry mixed with pride. Maya was growing up in a universe that Sarah's own parents could never have imagined. A universe where humanity had siblings among the stars. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the same observation deck, but everything had changed. The colony ship Bright Future had been found drifting near New Horizon, the frontier world where 3,000 humans had planned to build a new home. Every adult on board was dead. All 847 children were missing. The military briefing room was cold and clinical. Sarah sat with other parents whose children had been on the ship. Ambassador Torres stood at the front, his face gray with exhaustion. "We've completed the initial investigation," he said quietly. "All adults died from a fast-acting nerve agent released through the life support system. There's no sign of struggle. It was quick. And the children?" Someone asked, their voice breaking. "Gone, but we found something else." Torres activated a display. It showed aerial footage of the forests near where the Bright Future had landed. Strange structures dotted the landscape, elevated platforms with what looked like viewing screens and comfortable seating. "These aren't human construction," Torres continued. "The designs match Concordat architecture. Specifically, they match the observation platforms used on the hunting worlds." The room went silent. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. "What are you saying?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "We're still investigating," Torres said. "But we've requested an immediate meeting with the Concordat Council. We've demanded answers. We've demanded our children back." Sarah left the briefing in a daze. She returned to her quarters and found Maya's room exactly as her daughter had left it. Drawings on the walls, toys scattered across the floor. A photo of Maya and Oshtal making silly faces at the camera. Her cum unit beeped. A message from Kaishan, Oshtal's mother. Sarah almost deleted it, but something made her open it instead. "Sarah, I am so deeply sorry. I had no idea. None of us knew. Please believe me. Please." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Then she threw the cum unit across the room and sank to the floor. Her daughter's name a silent scream in her throat. Outside the window, Concordat ships continued their regular patterns, moving through space as if nothing had changed. But Sarah Chun knew better. Everything had changed, and someone was going to pay. The truth came from the darkest corners of the galactic network. A young human intelligence officer named Marcus Webb had been searching for 3 days straight, following encrypted data streams and hidden servers. What he found made him vomit twice before he could compile the report. Sarah sat in the emergency session with 200 other parents. None of them were ready for what they were about to see. Admiral Krakowski stood at the front of the room, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage. "I'm going to show you what Officer Webb discovered," he said. "I warn you now, this will be difficult to watch, but you deserve to know the truth." The lights dimmed. The screen came to life with alien text that scrolled too fast to read. Then the translation appeared, and Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Premium hunt package. Human juveniles, ages 6 to 14 minus 500,000 credits per viewer." The video began to play. It showed a forest that looked similar to Earth's, with tall trees and thick undergrowth. Then children came into view. Human children, running. They wore simple clothes and had metal collars around their necks. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit echoed through the trees. Sarah recognized one of the children immediately. She would know her daughter anywhere. Maya was running with 2 other kids, helping a smaller boy keep pace. Her face was dirty and scratched, but her eyes were alert and focused. She was looking for something, Sarah realized. Looking for a place to hide or a way to fight back. The camera angle shifted, and Sarah saw the hunters. Valkyrie warriors in ceremonial armor, carrying energy weapons set to stun. They were toying with the children, letting them run, making a game of it. In the corner of the screen, viewer counts scrolled past. Millions, tens of millions. This was being broadcast live across the galaxy. Several parents ran from the room. Others sat frozen, tears streaming down their faces. Sarah couldn't move. She watched her daughter dive into a hollow log, pulling the other two children in with her. The hunters walked past, laughing, deliberately missing the obvious hiding spot. Drawing out the game, the video cut to different children in different locations. Some were being chased through rocky canyons. Others were trying to cross rivers or climb cliffs. All wore the same collars. All had the same look of desperate determination. Admiral Krakowski stopped the playback. We found over 200 different broadcast channels, each one showing different children from the bright future. The streams have been running for 3 weeks. Since the day the ship was found. How many are left? Someone asked, their voice hollow. We've counted 612 children still alive across all the streams. The rest? He didn't finish. He didn't need to dodge. Sarah found her voice. How long has this been happening? We found records going back 50,000 years, Webb said, stepping forward. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. The hunting games aren't about animals. They never were. They hunt children. Sentient children from species they consider inferior. They've been doing this for longer than human civilization has existed. But why children? Another parent demanded. Because children are more fun to hunt, Webb said bitterly. They're more emotional, more creative, more unpredictable. They form bonds with each other, which makes them try harder to survive. Adults are too experienced, too dangerous. Children are vulnerable enough to hunt, but capable enough to make it entertaining. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. She remembered Caitian's kind smile, the way she had welcomed Maya into their home. She remembered Oshtal teaching Maya Valkyrie games and laughing at human jokes. Had they known? Had they always known? The Concordat Council has responded to our demands, Ambassador Torres said, entering the room. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. They expressed regret for the misunderstanding. They claimed they thought we knew about the tradition and had accepted it as part of joining the Concordat. They refused to end the hunts, calling them protected cultural practices. Protected. Sarah stood up, her voice shaking. They kidnapped our children. They're hunting them for sport in front of billions of viewers. And they call it culture? They've offered compensation, Torres continued, his voice flat. Credits for each child lost. They've also offered to exempt future human children from the hunts if we formally request it and accept certain treaty modifications. The room exploded in shouting. Parents screamed demands for war, for rescue, for blood. Sarah said nothing. She was staring at the frozen image on the screen, at her daughter's face as she ran for her life. That evening, Sarah received a data package from an anonymous source. It contained a video file, heavily encrypted. Her hand shook as she opened it. Maya's face filled the screen. She was in a dark cave, barely visible in the low light. Her face was thinner than Sarah remembered, marked with cuts and bruises. But her eyes were fierce. Mom, if you're seeing this, we're still alive. There are 600 of us left. Maya glanced over her shoulder at something off-screen. I don't know if anyone's looking for us. I don't know if you even know where we are. But I need you to know something important. She leaned closer to the camera, and Sarah could see the determination in her young face. We're not running anymore. The first week we ran. We hid. We cried. A lot of us died. But then something changed. We realized something the hunters don't understand. They think we're prey because we're small and scared. They think we're entertainment because we're young. Maya held up something that looked like a sharpened piece of metal, crudely tied to a stick. But we're human. And humans are really, really good at holding grudges. We're learning their patterns. We're making weapons. We're setting traps. Yesterday, we took down one of their supply drones. Last night, we freed 30 kids from another group. The hunters think this is a game with rules. We're going to teach them what humans do when someone hurts our family. She looked directly into the camera, and Sarah saw something in her daughter's eyes that hadn't been there before. Something hard and old and absolutely unyielding. We're learning, Mom. We're learning everything. How they hunt, how they think, how they die. And when you come for us, and I know you will, we'll be ready to help. Tell everyone to hurry. Tell them we're counting on them. But tell them something else too. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper, cold as space. Tell them that, if no one comes, we'll find our own way home. And we'll bring every single hunter's name with us. Because we're not the prey anymore. We're just really angry kids with nothing left to lose. The video ended. Sarah sat in the darkness of her quarters. Her daughter's face burned into her memory. She played the message again. And again. And again. Then she stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked to the communication center. She had calls to make. Favors to call in. Resources to gather. The Concordat thought this was about culture and tradition. They thought humanity would accept compensation and exemptions. They had no idea what they'd started. No idea what a parent would do for their child. What a species would do when someone hurt their young. The Concordat had made a mistake. They'd given humanity a reason to unite like never before. They'd given humanity a cause worth dying for. They'd touched humanity's children. And now they were going to learn what that meant. The war fleets gathered at Mars. Humanity had never built for war before, not on this scale. Every shipyard worked day and night. Every factory converted to military production. But even with every resource focused on the rescue, the math was brutal. The Concordat controlled 10,000 worlds. Humanity held 47 colonies. It wasn't a fair fight. Sarah stood on the bridge of the destroyer New Dawn, watching the fleet exercises through the viewport. Admiral Krakowski had accepted her request to join the military as an advisor. She had no combat experience, but she understood Valkyrie psychology better than most humans. She'd spent years working with them, learning from them, trusting them. That knowledge burned in her chest like acid now. Dr. Chun, we have new footage from the streams, Lieutenant Reeves said quietly. Your daughter's group. Sarah moved to the monitor, her heart hammering. The video showed Maya and about 30 other children in what looked like an abandoned facility. They built barriers from scrap metal and were setting up traps with salvaged wire. One boy, maybe 12 years old, was showing the others how to make spears from pieces of rebar. Maya stood on a raised platform, pointing at a crude map scratched into the wall. She was giving orders, Sarah realized. Her 9-year-old daughter was leading a military operation. They hit another supply convoy yesterday, Reeves continued. Killed 2 Valkyrie guards and freed 43 children from another hunting group. The Concordat is starting to call Hunting World Sigma 7 a containment situation. Sarah almost smiled. Containment situation. The hunters were scared. How many are left? She asked. 589 confirmed alive across all the hunting worlds. But Sigma 7 has the highest concentration. That's where most of the bright future children ended up. It's also the most popular broadcast location, which means the best hunters go there, Sarah said quietly. Yes. But it also means your daughter's group has access to more resources. They've been raiding the viewing platforms, stealing equipment, weapons, even medical supplies. On screen, Maya was helping bandage another child's arm. The tenderness of the gesture contrasted sharply with the weapons stacked against the wall behind her. These were still children, Sarah reminded herself. Children who'd been forced to become something else. The special operations briefing was worse than Sarah expected. Captain Morrison stood at the front of the room, his face grim. We've attempted infiltration of 6 different hunting worlds. All 6 missions failed. We lost 42 operators. The Concordat has defense satellites we can't bypass and ground forces we can't match. They know we're coming and they're ready. What about negotiation? Someone asked. The Concordat Council won't even respond to our messages anymore. They've labeled us as aggressive extremists. 36 Concordat species have signed statements supporting the continuation of traditional practices. Morrison paused. But we're also receiving covert support from 17 species. Mostly junior members who didn't know about the hunts. They're providing intelligence and, in some cases, equipment. It's not enough, Admiral Krakowski said. We need months to build a fleet that can punch through their defenses. The children don't have months. Sarah spoke up. Then we don't punch through. We go around. Everyone turned to look at her. The Concordat thinks in terms of honor and tradition, she continued. They're defending the hunting worlds because that's the proper response. But they're not expecting a Sherman's March. Explain, Krakowski said. We can't save the children by force, not yet. But we can make the cost of hunting them higher than any species is willing to pay. We hit their infrastructure, their trade routes, their colony worlds. We don't fight their fleets head-on. We make them bleed economically until they have no choice but to negotiate. That could take years, Morrison said. I know. Sarah's voice was cold. But at least we'll be doing something. And maybe, just maybe, it'll buy the children enough time to survive. On Hunting World Sigma 7, Maya crouched in the darkness of a ventilation shaft, listening to the Volcari guards below. She'd learned their language over the past months, learned their habits, their weaknesses, their fears. The other children waited behind her, silent as ghosts. They'd learned to move without sound, to communicate with gestures, to think like soldiers instead of victims. Maya hated what they'd become, but she was also proud of them. They'd survived when the hunters expected them to break. The guards were talking about the human fleet, laughing about how small it was compared to Concordat forces. They didn't sound worried. They should be, Maya thought. They really should be. She gave the signal. The children dropped from the ventilation shaft like a swarm of angry hornets. The guards barely had time to shout before improvised weapons found their throats. It was over in seconds. Maya searched the bodies quickly, looking for key cards and weapons. She found both, plus something else. A datapad showing broadcast schedules and viewer numbers. The numbers were going down, she noticed. The hunts were becoming less popular. People were uncomfortable watching now that the prey fought back. Good. Maya, look at this, whispered Jake, one of the older kids. He'd found a communication terminal. We can access their main network from here. Maya made a decision. She pulled up the broadcast interface and activated every camera on Sigma 7. Then she spoke directly to the billions of viewers across the Concordat. My name is Maya Chun. I'm 9 years old. I'm human. You've been watching us run and die for entertainment. You've been paying to see us hunted like animals. I want you to know something important. She held up the bloodied spear she'd taken from one of the guards. We are 289 now, down from 847. You've killed our friends. You've killed children who had families and dreams and futures. You did this for fun. You did this for tradition. You did this because you thought we were weak. Maya's voice grew harder, colder. You were wrong. We've learned to fight. We've learned to kill. We've learned every name and face of every hunter who participated. And here's what's going to happen next. We're going to survive. Our parents are going to come for us. And when they do, we're going to make sure every single person responsible pays. She stepped closer to the camera. This is not entertainment anymore. This is a promise. Humans never forget. We never forgive. Not when you hurt our children. So keep watching your screens. Keep paying your credits. Because the next thing you see is going to be us coming for you. The broadcast cut off as security systems activated. Maya and the others ran, disappearing into the tunnels they'd mapped over months of desperate survival. Behind them, alarms screamed into the night. The video went viral across the galaxy within hours. Some species watched in horror at what the hunts had become. Others watched in growing fear. A few watched with something else entirely, a dawning recognition. The humans weren't prey. They'd never been prey. They were predators who'd been pushed too far, and now they were showing teeth. In her quarters on the new dawn, Sarah watched her daughter's broadcast for the 10th time. Maya looked so different from the child who'd left on the bright future. Hotter, colder, dangerous. But she was alive. They were alive. And they were fighting. "We're coming, baby," Sarah whispered to the screen. "Hold on just a little longer. We're coming." Behind her, alarms began to sound as the fleet prepared to jump. The war was starting, and there would be no mercy given. The Concordat wanted to play games with human children. Now they were going to learn what happened when you made humans angry. They were going to learn the hard way. The first Concordat world fell in 3 hours. The human fleet didn't try to conquer it. They destroyed every satellite, every orbital station, every piece of infrastructure that made modern civilization possible. Then they left, moving to the next target before reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Krakowski called it the swarm doctrine. Hit fast, hit hard, and never stay long enough to fight a fair battle. Within 6 weeks, humanity had crippled 23 Concordat worlds. None of them were hunting worlds. All of them were economic centers. The galactic economy shuddered. Trade routes collapsed. Insurance rates for Concordat shipping went through the roof. Species that had signed statements supporting the hunts started to quietly withdraw their support. Sarah stood in the war room, watching the tactical displays. Red markers showed human fleet positions. Blue markers showed Concordat forces. The blue vastly outnumbered the red, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. Humanity was faster, more desperate, and absolutely unwilling to stop. "We got a response from the Drazen Collective," Lieutenant Reeves reported. "They're withdrawing from the Concordat and demanding an immediate end to the hunts." "That's the 4th species this week. What about the Valkyrie?" Sarah asked. No response. Their homeworld is fortifying, expecting an attack. Sarah studied the map. The Valkyrie homeworld sat deep in Concordat space, heavily defended. A direct assault would be suicide. But there were other ways to hurt them. "Target their colony worlds instead," she said. "Every single one. Make them choose between defending their core worlds and protecting their colonies." "That's a lot of targets," Quickoxide said, but he was already calculating logistics. "We'll need to split the fleet. Then split it. They wanted to play games with our children. Let's see how they enjoy it when their own homes are threatened." The message came through on an encrypted channel. The sender was listed as anonymous, but the coordinates pointed to Hunting World Sigma 7. Sarah opened it immediately. It was Maya, broadcasting from inside a captured control center. Behind her, Sarah could see other children working at terminals, their faces intent and focused. "Mom, we control the western sector of Sigma 7 now. We freed over 400 children from different species. The hunters are pulling back to fortified positions." Maya looked exhausted but fierce. "But we found something else. Records. Detailed records of every hunt for the past 1,000 years. Maya held up a data crystal. Names, faces, home addresses. Every hunter, every broadcaster, every person who paid to watch. We're copying everything and sending it to resistance groups across the galaxy. The Concordat can't hide this anymore. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. The children weren't just surviving. They were fighting back in ways the Concordat had never imagined. We need extraction, Mom, not just for us. For all the kids here. There are species represented here I've never even heard of. Some of these children have been here for years. Maya's voice cracked slightly. Some of them don't even remember their real names anymore. We're coming, Sarah said, even though she knew Maya couldn't hear her. We're coming, baby. The assault on Sigma 7 was the largest military operation humanity had ever attempted. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon they built was committed to this single objective. The fleet jumped into the system and immediately came under fire from Concordat defense platforms. Sarah stood on the bridge of the New Dawn as the ship shook from weapons impacts. Around them, human ships were taking hits, some exploding, others limping away with critical damage. But they kept coming, kept pushing forward with a ferocity that seemed to shock the Concordat forces. Breakthrough in Sector 7, the tactical officer shouted. Marines are landing. On the ground, the battle was brutal. Valkyrie warriors were trained, experienced, and well-equipped. But they were fighting an enemy that had traveled across the galaxy to rescue their children. An enemy that had already lost too much and had nothing left to lose. The human Marines fought with a desperate intensity that overwhelmed every defense. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't accept surrender. They just kept pushing forward, toward the coordinates where the children waited. Sarah went down with the second wave, against Admiral Krakowski's direct orders. She didn't care about orders anymore. She cared about finding her daughter. The control center was in ruins when Sarah reached it. Bodies littered the floor, both Valkyrie and human. But standing in the center of the carnage were the children. Nearly 300 of them, armed with improvised weapons. Surrounded by freed captives from a dozen different species, Maya stood at the front. A rifle that looked too big for her small frame held in steady hands. When she saw Sarah, something broke in her expression. The soldier's mask cracked, and underneath was still a 9-year-old girl who missed her mother. Sarah ran forward and pulled Maya into her arms. The girl shook with silent sobs, pressing her face into her mother's shoulder. Around them, other children were reuniting with rescue teams, crying and laughing and holding on like they'd never let go. You came, Maya whispered. You actually came. Of course I came, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know. I hoped, but I didn't know. Maya pulled back, and Sarah could see how much her daughter had changed. The softness was gone from her eyes, replaced by something harder. Something that had seen too much and survived anyway. We need to go, a Marine captain said urgently. The Concordat is sending reinforcements. We have maybe an hour before they arrive in force. But Maya was shaking her head. Not yet. We're not done yet. She led them to another room, where hundreds of children from other species huddled together. Some were barely conscious. Others were injured. All of them looked at the humans with a mixture of hope and fear. We made a promise, Maya said, looking up at her mother. We told them that when the humans came, we wouldn't leave anyone behind. We kept ourselves alive to keep that promise. Now help us keep it, or get out of our way. Sarah looked at the Marine captain, who looked at Admiral Krakowski over the comlink. There was a long pause. Load them all up, Krakowski finally said. Every single one. We didn't come this far to leave children behind. The evacuation took 43 minutes. Every child was loaded onto transports, along with the data crystals containing records of the hunts. The fleet jumped out just as Concordat reinforcements arrived, leaving behind a message broadcasted on every frequency. We have your records. We have your names. We have everything. The trip back to human space was quiet. The children slept, most of them for the first time in months without fear. Sarah sat beside Maya's bed in the medical bay, watching her daughter sleep. Even in rest, Maya's face was troubled, her hands clenched into fists. A Valkyrie child appeared in the doorway. Small, scared, one of the freed captives. Sarah tensed, but the child just stood there, trembling. "Is she okay?" The child asked in halting English. The human girl. "Is she okay?" Sarah looked at Maya's sleeping face, at the scars and the too thin frame and the expression that belonged on a soldier, not a child. "I don't know," Sarah admitted quietly. "But she will be. They all will be. We'll make sure of it." The Valkyrie child nodded and disappeared back down the corridor. Sarah returned her attention to her daughter, gently smoothing back Maya's hair. They had won this battle. They had rescued the children from Sigma 7, but Sarah knew this wasn't over. The Concordats still existed. The hunters were still out there. And humanity had learned something important in the past months. They had learned that they could fight. They could win. And they would never, ever forget what had been done to their children. The war was far from over. But humanity had sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. They had shown what happened when you pushed humans too far. When you threatened what they loved most. The predators had become prey. And the prey had shown that they had teeth after all. The Galactic Assembly Chamber had never been so full. Representatives from 247 species packed the observation galleries. Human warships held position outside. A quiet reminder of what had changed. Sarah Chun stood beside her daughter in the testimony section. Maya was 10 now, a year older than when she'd been taken. She wore a simple dress, but everyone in the chamber knew what lay underneath the civilian clothes. They'd all seen the broadcasts. They'd all watched the human children fight and survive. The assembly chair, a show elder whose crystalline body reflected the chamber lights, called the session to order. "We are here to address the practice known as the hunting games. The humans have presented evidence that we can no longer ignore. Maya Chun, daughter of Earth, you may speak." Maya stepped forward. She looked small in the massive chamber, a single child facing the representatives of hundreds of worlds. But when she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the translation systems. "My name is Maya Chun. I am 10 years old. 14 months ago, I was kidnapped with 846 other human children. We were put on a world and hunted for sport. Broadcast lived to billions of viewers, turned into entertainment." She paused, looking up at the galleries. 558 of us died. Some were killed by hunters. Some died from injuries. Some gave up and stopped fighting. I watched my friends die. I held them while they bled. I buried them in shallow graves because we didn't have time for anything better. The chamber was absolutely silent. But I'm not here to talk about us. I'm here to talk about them. Maya gestured to the side, where hundreds of children from dozens of species waited. We found children from 43 different species on the hunting worlds. Some had been there for years. Some couldn't remember their real names. Some had forgotten their home languages. She held up a data crystal, the same one she'd shown her mother months ago. This contains records of hunts going back 1,000 years. Names, dates, species. Over 2 million children killed for entertainment. 2 million. That's not tradition. That's not culture. That's genocide. A Valkyrie representative stood up. The assembly recognizes Ambassador Chun of the Valkyrie Dominion. Shen was old, her skin marked with deep purple of great age. She looked at Maya with something that might have been shame, The Valkyrie Dominion wishes to formally apologize to humanity and all species affected by the hunting games. We did not realize the depth of the cruelty we had normalized. We did not see the children as people. We saw them as tradition. She paused, her voice breaking. We were wrong. Deeply, unforgivably wrong. And yet the hunts continued even after we demanded their return, Sarah-chan said, stepping forward. Even after you knew we were coming for them. Even after the galaxy watched our children fight for their lives. We are a proud species, Chan said quietly. We could not admit our mistake. We defended our traditions because to abandon them would be to admit we have been monsters for 50,000 years. You were monsters, Maya said flatly. You still are. An apology doesn't bring back 558 children. An apology doesn't give them back the childhoods you stole. The chamber erupted in shouting. Some species defended the Valkyrie. Others demanded justice. The human delegates sat silent, watching and listening. The assembly chair called for order. It took several minutes to restore quiet. The assembly will now vote on Resolution 7749. The chair announced. The immediate and permanent cessation of all hunting of sentient beings. The declaration of such practices as crimes against sapient life. And the establishment of reparations for affected species. The vote wasn't even close. 209 species voted in favor. 23 voted against. 15 abstained. The hunting games were officially ended, but Maya wasn't done. She stepped forward again, her young face hard and determined. Ending the games is not enough. The hunters are still free. The broadcasters are still rich. The people who paid to watch children die are still comfortable in their homes. That's not justice. That's just stopping the crime. What would you have us do? The assembly chair asked gently. Maya looked up at the galleries, at the representatives of hundreds of worlds. Humanity is establishing the long memory protocol. For the next 10,000 years, human ships will hunt every individual who participated in the games. Every hunter, every broadcaster, every viewer who paid to watch. We'll cross any distance, we'll wait any amount of time. We will find them, and we will make sure they face justice. That is vengeance, not justice, a Drazen representative said. Call it what you want, Maya replied. We call it making sure it never happens again. We call it teaching the galaxy that human children are not prey. That no species' children are prey. Sarah stepped forward beside her daughter. The long memory protocol is not negotiable. Humanity will pursue this with or without assembly support. But we invite any species that wants to join us. Any species that believes children deserve protection. Any species that thinks 50,000 years of murder is enough. Over the next week, 47 species joined the protocol. Not the large, powerful species. Not the Concordat members. But smaller species, younger civilizations, species who had lost their own children to the hunts and never had the power to fight back. Together, they began the work of justice. Maya stood at the memorial on Earth, running her fingers over the names carved into black stone. 558 names. Children who should have grown up, who should have had futures. The memorial stretched for almost a mile, each name carefully carved, each one representing a life stolen. Do you think we went too far? She asked her mother, who stood beside her. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the sky, where ships from dozens of species flew in formation. Ships crewed by humans and aliens working together, hunting those who had hunted children. I think we did what we had to do, Sarah finally said. The Concordat thought they could treat children as entertainment. They thought we'd accept compensation and move on. They were wrong. Some people say we're being too harsh, Maya continued. That we're becoming what we fought against. Are we hunting children? Sarah asked. No. Are we doing this for entertainment? No, we're doing it for justice. Them were not what they were. Sarah put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. But you'll have to answer that question for yourself, Maya. You'll spend your life dealing with what happened to you. What you had to do to survive. That's not fair, but it's reality. Maya leaned against her mother, still looking at the names. I joined the protection fleet. My application was approved yesterday. I'll be training as soon as I turn 16. Sarah had expected this. She'd seen how Maya couldn't sit still, couldn't rest, always planning and preparing like the hunt might start again at any moment. You sure? She asked. Someone has to make sure it never happens again, Maya said. Someone has to protect the children who can't protect themselves. I know what it's like to be helpless and scared. I know what it's like to be prey. I never want another child to feel that way. In orbit above Earth, the protection fleet continued its patrols. Human ships flew alongside Velkari vessels now, crewed by members of both species working together. Sham's daughter had joined the fleet, one of hundreds of young Velkari who wanted to atone for their species' crimes, on former hunting world Sigma-7. Now renamed Haven, a massive facility had been built to house and rehabilitate rescued children. Thousands of them, from dozens of species, learning to be children again. Learning to sleep without fear. Learning to trust that Dr. Cation, Ostal's mother, ran the facility. She'd devoted her life to helping the survivors, trying in some small way to make amends for what her species had done. Ostal worked beside her, teaching the children games and stories, helping them remember how to play. Maya visited sometimes, when her duties allowed. The first time she saw Ostal after the rescue, they'd stood staring at each other, not knowing what to say. Too much had changed. Too much had been broken. But slowly, carefully, they'd begun to rebuild. Not the friendship they'd had before. That was gone forever. But something new, something forged in the understanding of what had happened and the shared commitment to make sure it never happened again. 20 years later, Commander Maya Chun stood on the bridge of the protection ship Remembrance, watching the coordinates scroll across the screen. They tracked the hunter to a remote system on the edge of known space. He'd been hiding for 2 decades, thinking he was safe, thinking humanity would forget. He was wrong. All ships, prepare for insertion, Maya ordered. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Some were human. Some were Velkari. Some were from species that hadn't even existed when the hunts ended. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the target, the communications officer said. He's asking why we're here. Maya thought of the names on the memorial, of the children who never got to grow up, of the 558 reasons why humanity never forgot. Tell him we're here to collect a debt, she said quietly. Tell him the children send their regards. The ship dropped into real space, and justice continued its long, patient work on Earth. Sarah Chun walked through the garden with her grandchildren, explaining the memorial to them, explaining why it was important to remember, why humanity had made the choices it made.